Welcome back, guys. Welcome back to Axles. We're back on the Triumph. In the last video you saw that we got this Triumph started, and what a beauty it does sound. In today's video we're going to be doing the valve clearances, and we're also going to be doing the brake fluid change. There is quite a few other steps that we need to do for the 12,000 mile service, but in this video we're going to tackle them two things, and then also we are going to do the coolant change as well. So stay tuned in our road to get this Triumph back on the road. Right, guys, so thank you very much for coming back to the channel. I appreciate all your support and all your help, and welcome to the new subscribers that have subscribed since the last video. If you haven't watched video 1, 2 and 3, I do recommend that you go back and have a look at those videos, and then you'll know what we are on this Triumph and what the journey has been so far. So in today's video, like I said, explained before, we are going to do the valve clearances. Now, going from the valve clearances, it is quite a lengthy procedure, and it takes about 1.5 to 2 hours, even 2.5 hours, depending on how competent you are in getting to those valves. Now, I've done the valve clearances off camera. I did make a video, but the video was coming out at 1.5 to 2 hours long to cover everything, and I just feel like you guys couldn't sit through that, bearing that task of watching it to see how the valve clearances are done. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut to in a moment, I'm going to cut to a time lapse of when I'm doing the valve clearances, and I've just got a bit of an over voice on the actual clip, just to explain to you in the process of doing the valve clearances. So like I said, I do apologise, guys, but I have done that off camera, and if anybody wants that lengthy video, shout out to me and I will send it over to you. We're also going to be doing the coolant change on this video as well. That's part of the 12,000 mile service, and again, like I say, we don't know when the last service was done on this bike in respect to the coolant or the brakes, anything like that. I have gone around the bike off camera, and I did notice that the brake pads have quite a lot of meat on them, so we do not need to change them. That's saved me a little bit of money. We're also going to be doing the brake fluid on this video as well. I'll show you how to do that, the easiest way to do it. Because bearing in mind this is an ABS bike, so there is procedures that you have to follow in order to make sure that it's done properly, and the technique that I use is the most simplest and easiest way to do it, in my opinion. So I'm going to cut to the actual time lapse now of the valve clearances, and then we'll be right back at you, so stay tuned, guys. Right, guys, as you can see, I'm starting to do the valve clearances on the actual Triumph. So just before we get started, the Triumph Speed Triple on 2020, the intake valve clearances need to range between 0.10 and 0.20, and the actual exhaust side need to range from 0.325 to 0.375. As you can see, I'm taking off all the nuts, so there are 5, 6 nuts on the actual rocker cover, and pull them out. There is a couple of different lengths, so just make sure that you rest the nuts where you know where they went, so you put them back in the same place. Now, getting the rocker cover off, it is a very tight squeeze. You need to slide it through the frame. As you can see, I'm wrestling with the rocker cover, trying to get it off, and I did find that they have 3 breather pipes on the top of the rocker cover, and I took off the actual breather intakes to give me more clearance. Now, there's one thing I need to point out, is when you're taking the actual rocker cover off, there is 3 dowels, locating dowels that sit on the front side closest to the actual exhaust to locate the actual rocker cover. When you're taking off, just please make sure that you be careful that these dowels don't come loose and fall into the actual head itself, because if they go inside, you're going to have trouble trying to get them out. As you can see there, those are the breathers that are taken off from the top to give me more clearance. Now, again, I'm continuing wrestling with this rock cover, and eventually I do get it up, but I'm always checking if them dowels, those 3 dowels were the ones that was concerning me the most, as I didn't want them to fall inside. Now I'll get the rock cover out and I slide it through on top of the engine and get it through the frame. It is a bit of a tight squeeze, but you can see I got it off there. Now it does have a rubber gasket on there, and I do recommend that you do replace the gasket and the actual rings around the actual spark plugs. So we can see now that I've got the rock cover off, and we've got the everything's now showing to do the check. As you can see there, I'm just checking what I wrote down regarding the specs. Now when you're doing the actual valve clearances, you need to make sure that the engine is cold. Do not do the clearances even if the engine's slightly warm, as metal expands and it will give you a false reading. Now at first I'm checking the actual intake tolerances. Now to do this, you need to rotate the engine using the inspection cover you can see there. You take the inspection cover off using a 17mm socket, and then you can rotate the engine. When you're rotating the engine, you need to make sure that the cam lobes are pointing up away from the actual valves, so the valves are closed shut. Then you need to get your feeler gauge, and you need to put your feeler gauge in between the bottom of the lobe and the actual valve itself, or the valve buckets. If they're not in tolerance, then you need to remove the timing chain or loose the timing chain off and take the cams out to replace the shims. When I'm checking these valve clearances, luckily they actually are all in spec or within tolerance of those readings that I gave you initially. As you can see there, I am checking the first two lobes, and it is quite a fiddly job, but you just have to be persistent and do check them a few times just to make sure that you are getting the right readings. Now, as the engine does have over 13,000 miles on it, I was expecting to do at least one or two of the valves and change the shims to get them in spec. But these were in tolerance, so this may make me believe that this has been into a workshop previously and I had the valve check done. Like I say, I can't say for sure because I don't have any service history in respect to the valve clearances. So as I've checked them now, and they're all in spec, it has given me more confidence that the engine is within spec of the tolerances, and it gives me more confidence on the performance for the engine, and nothing is going to actually destroy itself. If the valve clearances are out, they can lead to tight valves, and they won't open and close properly, and which can lead to low compression and starting issues. So even though it is a fiddly job and time consuming job, I wouldn't recommend you doing it unless you know exactly what you're doing or have the experience or confidence to do it. Now once you've checked all the valves, the reversal is you put everything back together. Put a new gasket on and then tighten everything up to spec. You can find the specs for the actual rock cover, bolts, etc. online, and then you just tighten them up within sequence. As you can see there, I'm just double checking everything one more time before I go ahead and put everything back together. Thank you very much. Right, so I hope you enjoyed that time lapse. Like I say, it has been done. They're all in spec, which is fantastic news. I also, on the comments, well, just to bring this up, that somebody did mention about the me checking the actual compression on the heads, and that I should have had the throttle open. Yes, I totally agree, and I did check them, and off camera after I got that prompt, and again they're all in spec. But like I say, please go back and watch episode 1, 2 and 3, and then you'll get an idea of what's been going on with this bike. So I've got the bike up on the ramp, and now first thing we're going to do the coolant change. Pretty straightforward procedure. Then what we need to do is three things that we need to do to drain it. So first thing we need to do, we need to remove the radiator cap to give that pressure of that water. Okay, so to drain as much as possible out of the actual bike, what I'm going to do is we're going to remove this lower hose here and make sure you put a bucket underneath, and then there is an 8mm bolt, if you can see there. Don't know whether the camera can pick it up, but there is an 8mm bolt, and that will actually drain the engine block of all the water that's inside. We'll get that done now, we'll drain it all, and then what I'm going to do is refill it back up with some distilled water and just run the bike for about 2 or 3 minutes, and then we're going to drain it again just to get all the crap out, and then we're going to fill it up and bleed it out properly. Alright. Okay guys, so there is a clamp here, so we need to remove this clamp here and then remove this bottom hose, and hopefully it's going to release all majority of the actual fluids. So we're going to get that at it now. Right, so when removing this pipe, just got to ensure that you remove it fully off the actual flange, and just clamp your pliers and just remove the actual clamp like that. So I'm hoping you may have to get a screwdriver in just to release it, because I'm not too sure how long it's been there for. So just have patience with it and it will come loose. Okay, so when you're taking it off, you just need to, like I said, just need to be patient with it, because it okay, just make sure you catch up. As you can see, so the water is quite clear, it's got no antifreeze in there. It does stink as well a bit, so definitely worth a change. So once that's draining, then we need to get to the bolt on the actual head, which is, like I say, it's an 8mm bolt here, just right there. Just need to loosen that and just let it all come out. Okay, so we get the ratchet on, and then we'll just crack this 8mm out of the head to release the rest of the water. Okay, you don't need to do too much force. There is a copper washer at the end of it, and it always is recommended that when you remove this, that you do replace the copper washer with the new one. Okay, there's not going to be much that comes out of it, it's just literally draining the head of any fluid that's remaining inside there. Okay. Okay, I'm just looking at this water now, that it is very, very clear. I was going to do a flush, but I'm going to decide against it. So I'm just going to let it drain completely, and then we'll just top up with new fluid. Okay, so that's all drained now, and now I put the 8mm bob back in there, and we're just going to tighten that up with a new copper washer on the end of it. Okay, you don't need to go crazy. Remember, it is a aluminium head, peeps, so just need to nip it up. Yeah, and that'll be enough. Right, so we're going to get the bottom hose back on now. If you can see, the bottom hose is here. So it's going to push this back on. It's going to go on easier than it came off. Like I said, it hasn't been off in some time. Get that back on. Get the pliers. And then we're going to get the clamp back on in its original position. Just keep working it, move it over. And there we go. So if you can see here, that the clamp is now rested on its original position, and the 8mm bolt is just behind there in the head, if you can see that there. Right, so we're ready now to start topping up the fluid. Now when they're doing the Triumph, I found out in the past, when changing fluids, that when you're topping it up, it is best to go slowly. Don't go crazy and just keep dumping fluid coolant inside there, because it will create air bubbles. And with the Triumph, they are notorious to create air bubbles actually in the cooling system. There is a bleeding valve on the other side which we're going to open up in a moment. I'm going to take you guys around to show you. So there is a bleeding valve on top of the actual, if you can see here, sorry, on top of the radiator. We need to crack that loose when we're topping up, and then we start emptying the fluid inside, the coolant inside, and then we just, like I say, take it easy, pour it in slowly, and then eventually you'll start seeing all the bubbles coming up and everything. There is an expansion tank inside the back here, and I'm just going to drain that out. It is straightforward again, and the easiest way I found to drain this is the small pipe that's coming off at the end of the actual expansion tank. Just drain that out, reattach it, and then you can top that up after everything's been bled. Okay, so we're going to top it up, and this is what I'm going to use. It's recommended OAT. It is recommended for motorbikes. It is important that you do use a specific coolant for the specific motorbike. So simple, only thing we do to start changing the coolant is we're just going to start pouring it into the top of the radiator. Like I say, slowly but surely it will get there. So it's going to get that all put in and topped up, and then I'll show you how we're going to check for any bubbles or air pockets, should I say. As you can see, I've already gone ahead and taken out the bleed nipple, and that's it. So when the water starts coming through here, you should start seeing bubbles coming out. They're the air pockets. But like I say, just pour it slowly, and everything should be okay. Okay guys, so you can see the fluid is now coming out of the radiator bleed nipple. So I'm going to put this back in now. And we'll go ahead and tighten up. Just make sure that when you're putting it back in that you don't cross a thread the actual nut, because it is quite easy to cross thread because it is a plastic bleed valve. So let's get that in now. Okay guys, so the bleed nipple's back on the radiator, and now we're going to get the bike started and get it warmed up. When you're bleeding it, you need to make sure you leave the radiator cap off whilst the engine's running. Get it up to temperature, and then you should start seeing the bubbles coming through, any airlocks, and then on the return line as well. Okay, so I'll get it started up now, and then we're going to leave it running for about 5 to 10 minutes to get it fully warmed up and get it up to temperature. Okay, so we've left it running for 10 minutes. The fan's kicked in fine, so the thermostat's opened. Now what we need to do, we need to let it cool down, and then we need to start topping up the fluid again, because there's going to be fluid that's gone into the system now. So I'm just going to start topping the fuel back up, the water back up with the coolant. And as it cools down, the air bubbles should have all come out. So and then what I tend to do as well, I just squeeze the bottom pipe just to get any last remaining bubbles out. Obviously the pipes are going to be hot, so be careful. Let's top it up. Okay, so we'll leave that there with the radiator cap off to let it fully cool down whilst we're doing the brakes. And then when it's fully cooled down, any air that's in the system will have sucked or drawn the water back into the cooling system. As you can see, it's starting to go down now as it's cooling down. So I'll just top it up a little bit more. And then we'll check it again once we've done the brakes. It should be fully cooled down by then. Right, whilst the coolant's cooling down, we're going to tackle this brake fluid. Now, on the Speed Triple and a lot of new bikes these days, they all have ABS. With ABS, under normal circumstances, if the brake fluid is fully drained out, then you would need a dealer tool to activate the ABS whilst you're bleeding it. Now, on all my bikes that I've done previously with ABS, the easiest way and the most convenient way to do it, that I've found, which makes it a more simpler process, is first we're going to take the cover off the brake reservoir, and then we're going to drain the fluid that's in this reservoir here, and then we're going to top the reservoir with fresh fluid, and then we're going to drain the brake fluid down until the fresh fluid comes through. That way you're ensuring there's no airlocks in the system, and also it helps with bleeding it through the ABS. Like I say, this is not a tutorial, and this is just the way I've done it in the past, and I've never had any issues. So if you want to give it a try, that's obviously entirely up to you. This is not a recommended procedure, but this is how I've done it in the past with all my bikes which have ABS, and it's been the most straightforward process. So we're going to get that cap off now, and then we're going to drain out the fluid that's in there. Right, so to remove the cap, there is two Phillips heads on the top, screws on the top. So you need to crack them loose and then just wind them out completely. And then same for the other side. Now, I haven't looked at this brake fluid, so this is the first time I'm seeing it, and I'm not having my hopes up for it to be nice and clear. But when you're dealing with brake fluid, you need to make sure there's a rag like protecting literally everything, because if this brake fluid gets on your paintwork or anything, it's just going to eat it away. So get some cloth down there just to catch any brake fluid that may drop. Like I say, it is nasty stuff. So pull this out. Now we can see the brake fluid's in there. It doesn't look too clear. Now I am going to be using pressed on brake fluid. I always use this in my cars, in the bikes, and it's been great stuff. This is a .4 brake fluid, which is recommended. Now we're going to just suck that brake fluid out with my trusted sucker, and then we'll get all that out of there. Like I said, there's not going to be much in. Okay, so we're going to just get the last bits out now. As you can see, it is pretty disgusting. Such nasty stuff to work with. Right, so what we're going to do the brakes, we're just going to fill this up now with fresh fluid. So fill that to the top. And that's fresh fluid inside there now. And then I'm going to just get you guys down to the bottom, and then we're going to do the first brake caliper. Right, so when we're bleeding the brakes, this is we need to bleed one at a time, and we need to take this cover off, which will show the actual, that's the bleed nipple there. So according to what I can see here, that looks like either an 8mm or a 7mm nut. So it's going to crack that loose. Right, so it's an 8mm nut, and I've gone ahead and cracked that loose. Now, you need to put a pipe on a plastic tube to collect the old fluid, and I'm using one with a catch canister inside it as well. Right, I'm just going to make it clear that this is, everybody may not agree with this method I'm using, that's fine. Everybody has their own way of doing it. So I'm not saying this is the right way, I'm not saying it's the wrong way. This is just the way I do it. Whether you want to agree with me or not, that's entirely up to you, but this is the way I do it. So, to release the fluid, you need to make sure the nut's tight, and you get onto the brake fluid and a brake lever. You need to pump it 3 or 4 times and then hold it in position. And then as you open this nut, it's going to push fluid through, and then your handle's going to touch the actual throttle. When it touches there, that's bottomed out, and then you tighten this nut back up. And then you're just going to continue doing that until the new fluid starts coming through. Just a word of warning, just ensure that you are keeping an eye on that reservoir at the top and keep topping it up. So I'm just going to pump it now. So I've got to get some pressure, keep hold of it, crack the nut, and then tighten. I'm going to pump it again, crack the nut, and tighten. Okay, so you want to keep doing that until the fresh fluid starts coming through. Once the fresh fluid starts coming through, then you go on to the other side and do the other side, and it's exactly the same reversal of the first one. But like I said, guys, just keep an eye on the brake reservoir and just keep topping up, make sure that it doesn't go empty, because if it goes empty, then you're going to draw in actual air into the system, and then it's just going to take a long time to get it bled. So this is my method. Like I say, it's entirely up to you guys to accept what I'm doing, but I'm not saying it's the right way, I'm not saying it's the wrong way. This is just my method. So I'm going to crack on with that now, and then as soon as I've done the front, I'm going to come back to you and show you again how to do the back brake. As you can see, I'm just halfway through the front brake now, and that old stuff that's coming out, it is pretty nasty. Right guys, so I've done one side of the brake fluid, and you can see how nasty that is. So you can see the bad stuff at the bottom, and it starts gradually getting to the good stuff. But yeah, that's not been changed in some time. That is nasty stuff. So you have to keep perceiving, and you'll get there eventually. So I'm going to just crack on with the other side now, and then we'll be done with the front brakes. Alright guys, as you can see, both sides are now bled on the front, and the fluid is nice and clear now. So I'm quite happy that the front is now bled properly. Right peeps, so we've done the brakes, front brakes done. There's just another technique I want to show you. Well, when I'm doing the brakes, after I've done the front brakes, I'll leave the reservoir open here, as you can see. And then what I do is I hold the brake lever in till it stops, and then put a cable tie around. Now I'll leave that for 24 hours. That will just force any minute bubbles, any air pockets that might be still there, and they will come through the system. So that's done. The coolant's done. With the back brake, again, it's a pretty straightforward process. I'm not going to show you how to do it because it's just exactly the same, more or less. So you'll drain the reservoir here, and then there's a nipple, a brake nipple on the on the caliper at the side, and then you just bleed in the same way. So you'll pump this, that'll push the new fluid down and through the bleed nipple. Again, 5-6 times, hold it, open the nipple, this will go down, you tighten the nipple and just repeat the process until the new fluid starts coming through. So I'm not going to show you that. It's quite straightforward, and I'm sure you guys don't want to see that as well. Right, so the next thing on the next episode, I want to finish off getting this Triumph ready for its MOT. So I need to take off the wheel here and pull out the hub and check the main bearing on the rear subframe. So that is part of the 12,000 mile service. We're checking the roller bearings and seeing if the bearings were right, and then just re-grease them up and then put everything back together, torque it all up, etc. There is also a suspension arm here with this one I'm pointing to here. That also needs to come off. That's part of the 12,000 mile service. Again, it has roller balls in, and we're just checking them bearings, make sure everything's right, and then we will put everything back together. And the last thing I'm going to do on this bike pre-MOT is get this chain sorted. Now it's not too bad after looking at it again. It is rusty all the way around. I think it could just do with a good clean and a re-grease, etc., and then it should be fine for the road. Tyres are, like I said, we expect the tyres in episode 1, and they're fantastic. They're in really good nick. There's nothing else I need to do. Also, part of the 12,000 mile service is the headstock bearing here, which needs to be, you need to dismantle and re-grease everything. And I know that has definitely been done. I have got a receipt for that because I think when the previous owner must have had the top yoke changed at some point. So that I've got a receipt when it's been reassembled. So yeah, that's been done. So I don't need to do that. So another thing ticked off. And then we'll get everything back together, and then we'll take it from MOT. Now with the MOT peeps, I don't know whether the MOT people allow me to film. If they do, great, I'll film it. If not, I'll take it off camera for the MOT. And then after that episode, on the final episode for this Triumph, we're going to get it on the road and take it for a good test drive, and then see how this baby performs. I'm looking forward to it. I know there's going to be power behind the bike. It's just going to be fantastic. But like I said, I'm always used to riding Harleys. I've been a Harley guy for a number of years, and this is my first Triumph and my first kind of speed bike, if you will, since the Harleys. I've had bikes in the past, but nothing that is this kind of performance, apart from a Yamaha R1 I had previously. But that was many years ago. Right, so I'm just going to take you back over to the board. As we can see, on the last episode we went through the cost. There was one thing that I did pick up, and I do apologise, that the air oil filter, I did put down that it was £30, it was actually £10, so I've changed that, I amended that. We've added on the brake fluid, which is £7, and then the coolant, which is £15. So that's all the Triumph done now. The grease, I've already got it, so that's not going to cost me anything. I don't really need to buy anything else for this bike. I don't know whether I mentioned it earlier on in the video that the engine management light that was on last time we got it started, when I did an OBD reader check, that turned out to be the coils that were disconnected, and there was airflow mass meter or something on that was disconnected, and I think that threw the cord. I've cleared the cord, so there's no cords on now, so that was great news. So I thought, yeah, I'll clear that up. And there's one final exciting news that I want to mention. I've got a new bike that's coming on this channel. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You need to stay tuned. You need to be subscribed and get that bell notice on in order for you to be in with a chance to see my new bike. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you on the next one. Peace out.
Subscribe.